This thing, when the light's on, it's off, right? Yeah, only in Orville. Okay. Great. I said that. All right, everyone, good morning. Welcome to the Butte Local Area Agency Formation Commission. This is our meeting of Thursday, December 5th, 2024. Up next, join me in salute the flag of our nation, please. Ready?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And a little out of order, I'm going to have a moment of silence, and I'd like to dedicate it to the two young victims of that horrible, horrific shooting yesterday. Please join me. Thank you. Now, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bolin,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Kimmelshoe,
Here.
Commissioner McGreehan,
Here.
Commissioner Duncan, Commissioner Betts,
Here.
Chair Connolly,
Here.
alternate Commissioner Rust, alternate Commissioner Bradley, alternate Commissioner Ritter, alternate Commissioner Shepherd. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, first up now is the consent agenda. Any errors or admissions there in the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Notice public hearings, 3.1, City of Chico, Henshaw Avenue, annexation number 4.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. Chair Connolly. This is a request to annex a total of 4 parcels totaling approximately 20.80 acres to the City of Chico. This is a similar request as to what we saw just a few months ago. The site is located in the Bellmure neighborhood of the City of Chico on the south westerly side of the city. This particular location is at the corner of Henshaw Avenue and Nord Avenue. The City of Chico considered a series of resolutions that would rezone or pre-zone the entire Bellmure neighborhood to R1, and that's to encourage development in that area. And along with that, they adopted a resolution approving a subdivision at these 2 lots for a total of 68 lots for residential development. And they did adopt a mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring program for that parcel or for that project. Since the time we received this application, we received a request from a nearby landowner to add their 2 parcels to this subdivision or to this project. This is allowed by government code that LAFCO can amend a proposal when it encourages orderly development. So I did go ahead and add those parcels. You can see that they're located at the corner of Nord Avenue and West East Avenue. That landowner has been limited in what they can do with those parcels because the pre-zoning had been a special planning area, which basically prohibits any sort of development. So annexing those parcels encourages development of those parcels at the City Chico standard and allows them to connect to city sewer. So today, the resolution that I'm requesting that you adopt, Resolution 03-2425, approves the annexation of 4 parcels and finds that the project would not have a significant effect on the environment and waive protest provisions pursuant to Government Code Section 56662.
There are comments by board members?
I'll just comment that I think this is a good thing. This is an area of growth for the City of Chico because the city voters decided not to go to the east, unfortunately, with Valley's Edge subdivision. I think this is the place that growth should take place, and I would encourage all of the Bellmere area to be included in this at sometime in the future.
Yes.
Any other comments? Public comment on this matter? Close public comment, which to the board.
Move approval?
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? We're moving right along here. 4.2, adoption of the Butte LAFCO 2025 calendar. Want to hang around for all the fun?
Thank you.
We appreciate how well they work.
We love them.
Thank you. Good job.
All right, any discussion on the calendar? The comment? Those public comment? Motion?
Move approval.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. 4.3, discussion of Orville sewer services. You, Mr. Lucas.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm going to address this item of the discussion of Oroville sewer agencies this morning and go over just a few points. I'm not going to belabor the report. Just as some background, the sewer service agencies, as we know them today, have been since 1971, been providing sewage collection and treatment services. You can see in the table on the front page who they are. It's Lake Oroville Area Public Utility District, Thermalito Water and Sewer District, the City of Oroville, and the Sewerage Commission Oroville Region, which is the treatment plant and the JPA. Collectively, they serve approximately 16,800 parcels. The map down below shows you their relative territory. So this is essentially the entire Oroville region and all the growth incorporated and unincorporated that they serve. So just running through this, the partnership obviously between the three collection agencies is fomented into the joint exercise of powers agreement that forms the Sewerage Commission Oroville region, which essentially operates the treatment plant. JPAs are a very useful tool. They allow agencies who have similar issues, similar ruling services, goals, and benefits to partnership and use the JPA to provide services collectively that they can do more appropriately, more efficiently under that JPA umbrella. So that's the situation that exists today in the Oroville region. Three collection agencies going into a common treatment plant who then form the Oroville Sewerage Commission Oroville region governing body. What we have seen over the years is some periods where that has not been so great. For those who have been around this process for a while, going back 20 some years, there have been periods where because of different personalities, different staffing changes, different elected officials that all cooperate and participate in the functions of SCORE, were not so great. And things were in need of some work. LAFCO did several MSRs. The second one we had just done not too long ago. And we looked at that very seriously. The first one called out a lot of insufficiencies that we felt were important. A lot of changes have been made. And what I want to say now today is that what we have witnessed as your staff over the last year of talking with them, this current group of individuals, the managers that represent the collection agencies, as well as staff from the city of Oroville, and of course the manager of the scoreboard, we have met with them, and I have yet to see, and I can tell you in 25 years of looking at this, that there's not been the level of cooperation that exists today amongst the group. So the JPA in my mind right now is functioning well, and they're communicating well, and they're all on the same page with the same goals. That's a huge value to our process. Another way to look at a partnership outside of the JPA would be a more fundamentally dramatic view, which would be to look at a reorganization of those agencies into one single agency with one single board. While there are certainly an argument to be made for that in terms of efficiencies at a larger administrative level, right now what we don't see is any support necessarily for that from either the agencies involved or from the public involved. So right now, what we really see is an opportunity to expand the JPA functions and really kind of jack up the JPA, if you will, to do more of the things collectively that make them look like, and the very last sentence there is the JPA can provide a governance structure to a larger degree that's functionally consolidated, even though they remain independent. The more they can do together under the JPA, the more functionally consolidated they become, the more effective and capable they become. So that's a huge part of this process. County development coordination. This is kind of where the JP or the sewer agencies get somewhat of a bad name or painted in a bad light as JPA and the collection agencies are obviously not land use agencies. They don't have the power to approve any development. That rests with the county of Butte and the city of Oroville respectively to do so. And they have to work cooperatively with the sewage agencies to make that effectively work. What they need, the sewage agencies, as well as the public developers, they need a consistent, common, predictable process. And one of those things deals very effectively with reviews, where the agencies get a lot of pushback sometimes for delays. It comes in that they are providing information after the fact, and it's not their fault that that occurs. The county's development review process does not get them involved at the front end so that they can thoroughly explain what the process is going to be, what the fees are going to be, and what permits and such that they need to accomplish for that development to work. My view, that should happen at the front end of the process. Nobody should have to wait and talk at the end to find out that the one thing that they really need, the sewer part, somehow gets hung up because the agencies were not provided information in a timely way, and then therefore their process drags out a little longer, which puts a lot of heat on them and ultimately puts a lot of heat on the commission, because we may end up getting a project for an annexation that is not ripe yet to a sewer agency that should have been resolved months or perhaps a year ago prior to us even seeing it. There's a big difference of opinion between perhaps myself and the way I have shared this with the commission and the way the County Development Services Department looks at their process. In this whole issue of coordination, which is really important, is this came up in 2006 initially when there was a development boom that was on the horizon, and we had thousands and thousands of potentially, they were paper lots essentially, but they were all there, and they totaled up to sewer connections that were more than what there was capacity at the plant. It was a big timeout. What do we do here? How do we get the sewage collection agencies back in front of the process so we're not building and promising things that we cannot yet deliver on at the functional level of the sewer infrastructure? We developed at that point what I thought was a very useful document, which was called the Master Cooperative Environmental Review Agreement. It's in your packet. We executed that in 2006. That was signed by the County Board of Supervisors, signed by LAFCO, signed by the 3 collection agencies, as well as SCORE. And in that case, South Feather Water Power was a part of that because there was a reason that they were there for a lot of development was occurring in their district. I'm not talking about them today at all because I don't think South Feather Water and Power has a particular issue, and no one's suggesting that they need to look at their process. So just even though they're a part of this current agreement, that part is not relevant today. That agreement worked really well. What it said was, County Planning Department, when you get a project in, you send those projects out under this agreement format. You say, here's all the things we know about that project, and it goes to each collection agency or the relevant collection agency, whichever district it happens to be in. That started a process of them providing some of the information you see on the attached form, which we call the preliminary review application. This was really an opportunity for the districts to say to the County Planning Department, prior to a project even being accepted for completeness and for review, is here's exactly how the sewer process is going to work. This is who's going to do what, when, and how much it's going to cost. I feel very strongly about this. I spent a lot of years as a county planner, and I would not want to put in front of my body who was making that decision an incomplete project, did not thoroughly understand and figure out the sewer situation prior to it being heard in a public hearing and being approved, leaving this leftover piece that has not yet been addressed. I think that's part and parcel as a part of the entire planning process. That should come when you're doing your project review. These are not questions that should come at the end, and these are not questions that should be answered by a condition that says, go work with that agency to secure sewer service. That should have happened in the front of the project. Now, there's differences of opinion perhaps on that, but I can tell you if we pull all the planners in the room or used to have a planning hat on, I think I would find agreement that that's a common practice. Somewhere along the line, the county stopped doing that. They transferred over to track it, some other processes where we no longer got those projects on a regular basis. And then we just stopped seeing these pre-environmental reviews come to us altogether. I spoke with past directors and they had reasons why, oh, I thought this, I thought that. It's like, well, it's a signed agreement by the Board of Supervisors that binds you to do this. Why is it not happening? I can't tell you why it's not happening because I'm not there. But what I do know is by it not happening, you put an incredible burden, the county planning department puts an incredible burden on the sewer agencies of the Oroville region to scramble to come up with information. And then at the 11th hour, get beat up for not getting it to them fast enough. So first of all, I want you to recognize that agreement was put in place. It was utilized by the gentlemen in this room who represent the agencies, and it worked really, really well. And if they had questions, we also received it as your LAFCO staff, and we would also reply to ensure things like boundaries were accurately defined, that the services they're asking for were actually capable. Things that LAFCO might have to look at when we annex that territory into that sewer district in order for them to get that service. It's fundamentally important that we all just pull in the same direction at the same time with a minimal amount of effort so that we can get a project approved. This is not about burdening the project. This is about putting things in the right order and making sure that when you're going to ask for services before you take it in front of a county planning commission, a city planning commission, that stuff's figured out. It's determined. Your leaders are not being forced to make decisions with some piece of the information missing. I very much want to see that come back to place. I think these gentlemen will speak today. They can tell you what they believe about that. But that agreement is legally, in fact, in place today. And I'm asking as one of my requests that you direct me to work with county administration to make sure that agreement gets enforced. There's also a part of the agreement that didn't exist that we were asking for, and I'm going to give great credit. Brian's not here today, but Mr. Rang, your city's administrator, has participated in these meetings and recognizes that at the time it was only this agreement was asking the county to provide those projects to the districts under that format. It didn't include the city of Oroville. For a lot of reasons, that was not a big problem in 2006. City of Oroville wasn't booming like the county was in some of those areas down along southwest part, part of Oroville. Mr. Ring fully believes now that his agency, his planning department ought to be a part of the agreement, that it makes sense for him to also have his agency give these people the same benefit of this advanced warning and advanced analysis. So we collectively in a meeting of staff agreed that Oroville should and would want to be added to the agreement. So I'm also going to ask today that you direct me to expand that agreement to include the city of Oroville so that their planning projects are in the same pipeline process as the county projects as they come to the sewer agencies. The municipal service review, I'm going to jump to that, then we can just have a conversation. The MSR, this one we just did was in May of 23, so it's not even, it's a little over a year old. It wasn't surprising, but what I want to point out about that MSR was two things that were very clear. And in the MSR did not find any comprehensive significant operational deficiencies of the overall system, which means sewage was being effectively collected, treated, and disposed of, and the agencies were fiscally sound and governed appropriately. So what the MSR found out on one hand was there's no red flags here. Nothing is being done wrong or incorrectly or inappropriately. However, the MSR also took another view in its recommendations was there's clearly three agencies. They form a JPA that runs the sewage treatment plant. I think most people would reasonably think, is there a way that any of that could be consolidated to make it a little cleaner and neater and result in some efficiencies that would matter to the point of reducing costs to the eventual service recipients? So that's more of a hypothetical academic question. Is it automatically just assume that if you can shrink agencies down in size, they don't have any particular identifiable problems today, does that automatically make things better? I can't answer that question, but I know that the process to learning the answer to that costs money and it's going to take some time. And I don't know that we have a lot of external support for that. So the grand jury comes along and looks at our MSR and makes a similar comment, but the quotes that I took from the grand jury report are, I think, relevant. quote, wastewater service districts function in an open and transparent manner, and each is doing what is required to make the system function. So almost mirroring our MSR, they're saying on one hand, we see that they're functioning, everything's working, sewage is being collected, treated, and disposed of in a proper public health and safety manner. And consistently within the funding that has been available to them. They also made the same observation that is there a way that these three can become one and simplify the process? Again, it very well may be possible, but it's not as easy in state law to just snap your fingers and say, we want this to be one. To be one is a very complicated process. It's called consolidation, and it's even more complicated when you have agencies who have different principal acts. In other words, if you're all irrigation districts, it's easier to blend 3 irrigation districts together than it is to blend an irrigation district together with a sewage collection district, with a public utility district, with a charter city. They all have different fundamental legal constructs for which form them, which we would end up having to somehow sift through all of that and come up with something at the end that mirrors what we want. Possible? Yes. It would take a lot of study, probably an expense of $80,000 to $100,000 to study the process. And what would that get you to? That would get to ultimately a consolidation. So I want to just take 2 terms here. One is, as I explained the JPA, how it works, it's very similar. I refer to it as a functional consolidation. It's not a legal consolidation. Those entities are all legally independent of one another, but they functionally work together as one. And they could certainly do even more things as one. So I looked at this issue and balanced it between the value to move forward and study what could be done with them in a formal consolidation versus what are the tools we have now and what are the problems that we have right now to address and what's the most important, best use of our time. I have made the recommendation in this report, or at least I'm leading you to the situation, to the recommendation that I am not saying that the consolidation is not valuable. And I know that others have brought this up and it's near and dear to them to look at that. I also think, as a person been doing this for a long time, is that I have to look for what I think is the most effective way to move a process forward that will still end up with the results that we hope for. And right now we have this vehicle called a JPA, and it has a tremendous amount of authority. They could really literally use the JPA as their single mouthpiece. They're not there yet, but they're talking in that direction. So after meeting with Shannon and I on several different occasions with the whole group, talked for quite a bit, I think we were in consensus that there is improvement to be made. The MSR pointed out some of those things, and that the JPA could be expanded in its authority, not in its authority that it currently has. It's pretty broad, but expand what it's focused on and how it wants to consolidate how it functions. In other words, can we get to a point where person wants to do something, wants sewer service in the Orville area? Is there just one point of contact? Will there ever get to be just one billing process? Will there be one consistent fee process? Those things take time. All those things would have to be worked out in a consolidation process, but they can also be worked out as the JPA without if I might say, the heavy-handed burden of worrying about how you're going to be dissolved and go away. This is an incentive, in my mind, to our collection agencies to recognize that they control their own fate here. If we continue to see problems, the commission always retains the option to do something larger and more significant, i.e. a consolidation of some type. And that would be forced, but it's there and you don't lose that ability. But I really wanted to find a way is, can we get there, that functional consolidation, in a way that makes more sense, costs less money? We don't have to spend a lot of tax dollars to study it, but yet they understand the significance of it and can come back with agreements that we could agree with. Butte County's response letter came as a result of the grand jury's report. It basically said, look, we've got a lot of development we need to promote in the Orville area. We need to do everything we can to streamline housing. I mean, that's what this is about. This is what it's about for everybody now, is how do we get more rooftops? Rooftops aren't going to get any faster with a consolidation. They hopefully will get there faster with a joint powers agreement that utilizes some of the things that a common network might do. And I'll talk about those in a little bit. But so basically, we don't disagree with the county and that this needs to be looked at. We just think that there's a way to, I think that there's a way to get there that that is the least argumentative, the least confrontational way that still allows for cooperative working. So as I pointed here in the last item, meeting with the district JPA manners, that was has been just very positive. They've been so forthcoming with information and ideas. Like I said, again, this group has exceeded by many standards the collection of individuals in the past who have done some things that have also brought a lot of negative light to the districts. So looking at the JPA just real quickly, it's empowered to provide a range of management services. It's formed under the California Joint Powers Act law. You can see listed there 1 through 9 on that there are any number of things they can do, entering into contracts, accepting grants, dealing with employees, consultants, plans, issuing bonds, designing, constructing facilities. So really the JPA gives them this tool bag of things that they can already use. And what I really want to see them do is accept that under this enhanced cooperation as the next point is I really want them to accept that responsibility. They're not going to like to do all of it. They're not going to like everything I have to say, but I'm trying to make this work for those agencies so that they can get to the quickest possible solutions. And I think they can do that through the JPA, and they maintain their independence, always knowing that if they don't continue to make improvements and have successes that provide efficiencies, that we may go back and look at something that's a little more dramatic than looking at the JPA. So some future actions that I'm suggesting to you this morning. The goal was obviously to make the JPA structure enhance collaboration and remove barriers to efficient streamline actions. I already see that happening at levels that none of you will see, or most of the public won't see, because it's behind the scenes. It's the staff grunt work that gets done, the calls they make between one another. That stuff is happening, and it happens weekly. So for me, the short-term goal to enhance and improve sewer service delivery in Oroville region is 1, immediately implement the 2006 Master Cooperative Agreement. That just has to be done. We cannot continue to operate in this void at the planning department where significant requirements of new development are being left to the back end instead of being addressed at the front end. I'm not sitting as an elected official. I once sat as a commissioner on a few things. I would want all the information I can get. It would be really hard for me to tell you, I want you to approve something, but it's going to happen later. And I don't know how it's going to work. I can't even guarantee you it will work, but that's the solution to your problem. Would you please go ahead and vote for this project? I don't think that's an appropriate way forward. I think that everybody in the community should deserve to get that information, sunlight it up front. Everybody knows how it's going to work. Not a commission meeting that gets approved for a project and then 3, 6, 8 months, a year later, you suddenly get us a project in front of us. It's a very discoordinated process. I don't think it's helpful to the overall development of our community. Near term, develop a single publication issued by the JPA to describe the general public other services provided by the JPA and its members and how the public can access the services with fewest steps. This is a very critical first step that we had talked with the district managers about was how do we start to look more like one agency? Well, one way you do that is you have one publication that describes how the process works. You don't have to go get Lopez or go get Twisteds or go get the city of Oroville's. You go to one place, preferably through the SCORE plant, perhaps. That's for them as the JPA to work out. And that's where they'll get common documents that give you the common process throughout the region. Long-term goals are 2. Continue to consider broad umbrella opportunities under the Joint Powers Law to improve functions, programs, policies, and practices that could be accomplished with the SCORE JPA for greater efficiency. So in other words, we continue to work with them, encourage them, and they work together to make that JPA the best possible thing it can be, to the point where if we're all lucky 5 years from now, when someone talks about Oroville Sewer, they'll talk about the JPA. They'll talk about going to SCORE. They're not necessarily going to focus in on Lopez or Twisted or the city of Oroville Sewer Department. They'll go to where the joint JPA collection of information exists, which should hopefully streamline the process and make it more readily available to anybody who wants to use it. The other long-term goal is just listed as 3B, which is really an alternative, a fallback position, which is a comprehensive reorganization of 3 agencies under a single governing body. Again, I'll use the term because it's used so often. That's what I consider to be the nuclear option. That's where we go if they can't make the JPA work. I think we should give them that opportunity. So I'm asking for 3 things today from this group. I want you to direct me to request county administration to immediately implement the current agreement that has never been terminated. I want you to ask me to work with the sewer agencies, the county and the city to update the agreement to include the city as a signatory to the agreement. And then finally, direct me to work with the JPA SCORE staff, its member agencies to expand the management role of the JPA to enhance collaboration between the members and remove barriers to efficient, streamlined actions and by among the JPA members for the benefit of the public. So I guess in short, sum it up is this has been a 20-year process of watching this evolve. And some of you have been around for some of that in a very instrumental way. And we have looked at this idea of consolidation always. But as I've always tried to do with the commission, I try not to make things overly bureaucratic, overly governmental to the point where we're doing things that maybe don't need to be done, even though they sound good to do. So I'm sorry if I undersell things at times, but I really believe right now what we have in front of us is a vehicle, the JPA. It has the tools necessary to achieve the goals we want. And it doesn't come at the cost or expense or aggravation of going through a forced consolidation process. Having said that, I'm also not saying that the consolidation process never has a purpose. It's there. It's always there. It's the final thing you can do. But, like a tenant and a landlord, you try to work with your tenants as best you can to get to the goals before you give them a notice to vacate. I think we have options today. I think you're going to hear from this group today. And then I ask you to ask me any questions that you have. And if you think this makes sense, then please direct me to do those things. I also want to just say one more thing. Mr. Connolly's been the supervisor for this area for 5 years, 24 years? I don't know.
20 years.
20 years. Oh, I expect 4 more out of you, Bill. And
Unfortunately.
Bill has talked to me extensively about this, and I have listened to him, and he has very good ideas and reasons why he'd like to see a consolidation. And while I don't disagree with Bill, what I think Bill has managed to make me think through this process is, if we can't go that route for the difficulty that it exists, can we find another route? So Bill inspired me to look for something that's sort of in the middle ground without taking away his desire to ever, we're not taking consolidation off the table. I'm just hopeful that we can get to a process over the next few years with the JPA. It will never talk about consolidation again, because they have done things that everybody will look at and go, yeah, that's efficient. That makes sense. That's reasonable. Prices are consistent. We're not overpaying. We're not undercharging, whatever. So I got to give Bill credit for helping me reshape my thinking on this. And it's good. It's good that we argued about it, because it gave me a better view. It also gave me the ability to talk with these gentlemen about what their process are. And it was a very transparent, open conversation. So I'm going to stop with that. And you guys ask me any questions you have. I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, you have a room full of folks.
Well, I have to say, about the county not following the rules. It took this to bring it to a head. Yet nobody ever called me. Nobody ever complained. Nobody ever said this is happening. So, you're pretty heavy on the county when everybody here could have called me and said, this is what's going on. We're not being notified. They're not following the rules. And I think still consolidation's there. It'll probably be in the future. I mean, I'm a reasonable person. Everybody's toilet's flushing, everybody's getting that, but they'll never convince me having 3 agencies when you can have one is totally more efficient. I see the difficulty in getting there. So I like what you laid out, but again, I think everybody needs to take more responsibility. If you're not getting what you want, call somebody. And some of my angst is from the people that came to Oroville to try to develop, and it was confusing. If you live in this neighborhood in the city limits, your TID, which we agree that whoever can provide the service the best should. We don't want to be jumping into another sewer district just because you're in the city limits. And then you have to go to SCORE. And then we had kind of an anti-growth thing going on at SCORE in the past, using I&I as an excuse and other things. And one of my major concerns for all of us is moving forward as the standards go up with the state and we lobby and look for money. You got to strengthen your JPA. It's got to be one voice. We can't, it's really got to be strong because it's a regional impact and it's a regional lobbying effort. And I'm concerned about that because I don't think it's going to get less strict. And then there's maybe the potential we'll have to build another plant sometime. And that's going to be hard with the JPA. But I think what you laid out is reasonable to me. And to the constituents I represent. That's my thought.
So I think, I think what you said is right on as far as consolidation. I think the government is heading towards a direction, all of government is heading towards a direction of doing smaller government, more consolidation. Now's the time to do it themselves until they're forced to do it. I mean, there's going to come a time when it's forced to happen. So now you can kind of manipulate and do what you want. At this point, they have that opportunity. And I hope they take that opportunity because it will come someday that they'll have to. But the whole thing with not notifying, I mean, I as a developer I can't even comprehend not telling every agency, Park and Rec, everybody of what you're planning on doing and how things are going and signing off on it. I mean, to say that, but the problem is what I've seen over the years, that comes from the top down. You can have all these rules, you're supposed to do stuff, but unless from the top down, they want to implement those things and see the power in it and the importance of it, they're not going to do it. So we can sit there and develop all this stuff, but if they don't see it, if they don't understand it, and as a developer, I would be ticked off if I got to the end of the process and found out that someone didn't know about it. That would be, and as a council member, if something was brought to me and that wasn't established, I'd blow a cork. I mean, that's absolutely not the way to do business and not the way for a city to run or a county to run. So I am flabbergasted at that point. So,
But they got to call you so you can get the hammer.
well,
Go to
they
work.
don't need you as a hammer. They have the information right here. They should be doing it. The top people do not want to do it. They don't see the importance in it. Until they see the importance and the importance for the people that are trying to develop the property, they can do what they want. They can ignore it. And I don't know how you cause that to happen.
I think with regard to the master cooperative agreement is, well, I was there when you developed it and we implemented it and it was working good. It gave us the information needed to the decision makers to make a proper informed decision. I think maybe a lot of it got dropped when the recession came and then COVID and then changes over in the planning division, county planning division. So I don't know if it's a decision, we're not going to do this anymore. I think it's just kind of people forgot. So yeah, maybe a reminder to the county to do this would be good. Also, I have, are there any examples of any JPAs like this? What you're looking to do out in California anywhere?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes. I'll give you one example that's unfolding as we speak. And Mr. Brown actually had something to do with it for a little bit. Mendocino County in the city of Ukiah Valley has multiple water providers. This is a small.
Sent you that article.
Bill and I actually talked about it. And it's a great example. So they had multiple small independent water districts. Each had their own water rights that they had over years. So there was no coordination between them. City of Ukiah continued to build. It needed more water. It needed to coordinate water systems. Long story short is several years of discussion and aggravation that went into talking about this. But what they have formed now is a joint powers authority. And the members are now those individual water agencies and the city of Ukiah. And the city of Ukiah has taken on the burden, if you will, of being the staff to the JPA. So the city of Ukiah's water department essentially runs the JPA as staff for the agencies. In those cases, water agencies, and the one we're talking about, sewage collection agencies. They had the same conundrum they had to fight through. Do we go for a consolidation, which has a lot of unknowns? In their case, water rights permits were extraordinarily valuable. And how do you make sure that none of that is lost in the process? That was much tougher for them to solve because the state's involvement there is so great. But what they did see was we no longer can function as independent entities without cooperating between our systems. And that's what the JPay there did. It put them in a position where they now work together on how their systems are maintained, managed, and grow, how their water rights are moved around so that they can make sure they have adequate water for new growth within the Ukiah Valley. So that is a really great example of a very complicated process. The sort of catch-all LAFCO fix would have been a consolidation of services, problematic in a lot of ways, but they saw the JPA as a tool to get there. So that's one that's in process that I think has a lot of similarities with what we're talking about today. There's a few others in the state, and they generally deal with fire service where you have multiple independent fire entities. That model is going away very quickly. Those, like Steve knows this from the LAFCO world, little fire departments are dissolving and being merged into larger units every year. It continues to happen in every county because it's just not efficient to provide fire service on these little tiny piece by piece basis. So we have a lot of county authorities that are fire authorities that are formed as JPAs, and they operate as the JPA with their membership being the individual fire districts that still exist. Reason again for some of the delay and why that works well for fire districts is there's a tremendous difference in a whole lot of things, how their payroll is done, what kind of retirement systems they might be involved in. I mean, it's hard to take disparate organizations of different levels of effectiveness and suddenly figure out a way to make them all work together. It's not impossible. It just takes time and effort to do it and willingness of agencies. So these fire districts, instead of trying to get rid of the little fire districts, they said, let's bring them all in under the umbrella and let's treat it as one. And it's almost like, we hear around here, we have a boundary drop. That's essentially what it is. We just get to the point now where fire services provided whoever first come, first serve. It's whoever's the closest engine rolls. And that's kind of what these JPAs are leaning towards, is something that looks functionally consolidated, even if their individual boards still manage their own budgets and have governing bodies that still participate at that level. So that's kind of how it's being used. And JPAs are all, as you probably all know, they're used widely around the state for a number of purposes. And there really is, they're the vehicle that was created to say, how do we take multiple agencies who have a common goal and have a vehicle that they can use that they can then move forward under one legal entity? And that's the concept of the JPA. So that's kind of, we are lucky in that since 1971, we've had this JPA. We just have not used it in the way that I have described others of using it. It's been effective. It's just, it has so much more potential.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, Steve. By any chance, did you provide the agenda and this staff report on this agenda item with the county administrative staff, the key members of staff, so they got this in a timely manner and they're aware of what's being discussed today?
We circulate our agendas to the county. But
I'm
I
talking
will
about
say
the
they did
staff
not.
report too.
This did not go directly to the Development Services Department, if that's what your question is. I have had conversation. Well, yeah, they're online right now. I've had conversations with them about it periodically, emails that I have made over the time, but we have not sat down and actually talked this out.
But they're online watching this.
They're
as we
online,
speak.
so I
Do
would
they have
greatly
the ability to
appreciate.
interact with us as we open this up for discussion?
I'm sorry.
Will they have the ability to interact with
Oh,
us as we open
absolutely.
this up for discussion? So we'll see where this goes.
So, that's the short answer.
Yeah.
I have made attempts and I can't force them to do it.
Understood.
That's what it
Don't get me
comes down
wrong. I
to.
mean, we have similar backgrounds. I know well what you've been dealing with.
I will elaborate on one point is we send out our notices when applications come in. Every single affected agency gets that. They get it via email. It's up on our website, the entire packet. We do not move forward. Jen and I will not take a project forward for completeness until we have comments back from everybody who we feel is relevant. We do not believe it's best to push those things off to the end. And this just might be a philosophical difference. But what we're not even getting those. Track It has almost no information on it. And if it does have a project listed, not all the information's there or readily accessible. I think you're going to hear that from others. I think your own staff probably have found that out to be the case. This is a situation where you either see planning as a comprehensive process that the planning department runs through and checks all the boxes for every single thing that has to occur to make that project work, not just to do the part that the county controls and leave those other pieces to a later stage of the development or entitlement process. That to me is not effective and not appropriate and is not helpful to anybody involved, especially the people who are being asked at the end to come back with significant service provision such as sewer and water.
I've got a quick question. Was this brought about by the grand jury report?
What?
Your concerns, your, what you're talking about today? Is it?
So I'll be
I mean-
honest with you. Go ahead.
No, I just think from talking to different agencies, I think that the grand jury report was overzealous. And it definitely, I think, like you said, the JPA is working well together at this point in time. Sure, there can be some improvements, but I just wanted to state that I think that the grand jury report was definitely overzealous and didn't look into all the issues.
So to answer your question very clearly and bluntly is no, the grand jury report had very little influence in what I presented today.
Okay, so this was on your radar long before the
This
grand jury
started-
report. Okay,
Yes, 15 years ago, first MSR, second MSR. Mr. Connolly's been tracking this for a long time. So no, the grand jury report, it was a happenstance. I didn't know they were going to do that report. And so, no, it didn't matter.
okay, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Public comment? Anybody like to speak? Good morning.
Hello, is this on? Okay. Thank you, Commission, for letting me talk. I'm Glenn Sturdivant, manager at SCORE, the Sewage Commission. I've been the manager there for a little over 4 years now. My first goal, first directive from the board when I took over as manager was to fix the relationships in the JPA, period. I got great staff that can run the plant, make sure that we're meeting our regulatory requirements. My job was to fix the relationships in the JPA. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but the JPA, in my opinion, is better than it's been in my history at SCORE, which is 12 years. I have weekly, if not daily, conversations with all 3 member entities. I talk to Fred, Brian from the city regularly. I talk to Dave Goyer from Lilliput. I talk to Jamie Boucher and Chris Heindel from Thermalito regularly. We are all lockstep. We all believe that we can accomplish what Mr. Lucas and the commission here wants to accomplish via policy decisions and cooperation. With that said, I also realize this is a small moment in time when this JPA has been this effective as far as communication and cooperation. And so my goal is to get this in paper, get this in policy, get this in concrete so that when I pass the torch to the next guy or woman, they run with it, and it's the same situation that we've created here. Same thing for Thermalito, Lilliput, and the city. I want to make this a permanent, good situation. Now, I realize bad actors can come in, mess that type of stuff up, but we want to do what we can to accomplish what you guys want without totally upsetting the apple cart. As far as SCORE and development, capacity is not an opinion game. Right? Capacity is we have the capacity to serve your project or we don't. Whether I like it or not, we run a study, numbers come out. I tell you, this is what we can take in. We're running out of capacity at SCORE. We're under, because of the county. Mr. Connolly helped with this. We got a grant. We're doing an expansion that should start. It's out to bid now. The bid ends December 19th, hopefully spring. It's up and going. We'll add some more. But it's very much a black and white issue when it comes to capacity for us. And for me, this has been one of the things that's really been tough for me to deal with as the manager is being brought in the 9th inning. I'd hate to see one of the member agencies, like you said, tell a developer at the last minute, oh, by the way, we don't have capacity for your apartment building that you just spent $10 million building, right? That's crazy. That can't happen. And the way to prevent that from happening is I get the plans first and I go, yes, we can serve your apartment, or no, or yes, we can if this mitigation is done at the plant to accommodate, which then we would pass on or try to pass on to the developer. That's a SCORE board decision, not mine. But so we need to be very first step, period, because we are a black and white yes or no answer. We are not, oh, we can run a sewer line to you, we can get to you, we can change this, we can make this work for your, we are not that. We have the capacity or we do not. So from our standpoint, and to speak what Mr. Lucas said, now I don't deal with the county. They're not our land use agency. My land use agency is the city. I deal with the county via Thermalito Water Sewer in Lake Oroville because that's their land use agency. But if they're not getting the information to pass on to me, I can't make that call. If the city's not giving me the information, I can't make that call. So communication, cooperation is key, has to be, or this will break. And and that's what you're worried about. So I am utmost and 100% committed to making this thing work at the best way it can. I fully believe, my staff fully believes we serve the community and we want to do that to the best ability we can. And we've never faltered from that and we never will. So whatever effort, we got in buckets. We got it all day long. So we're not afraid of effort to get this thing done. We're not afraid of making changes. We want what's best for the community. But we also want to make sure that we're not getting blamed for decisions that weren't ours to make. So from SCORE's point of view, we need to be told at the very front end of all the processes, whether that's the county or the city. And if that's not happening, it's broken. So I don't personally think that the mechanism is broken. I think the execution is what's failed. So I think we can fix that. And I'll give you my guarantee, SCORE is 100% all in to do that for you guys and for the community. So that's all I got. And I got any questions, I can answer them.
Try to stay off the front page.
I'm trying to keep my head down right now.
So you're not getting that information.
Sometimes we don't, sir. I mean, to be honest, and the city's, our land use agency, and I don't want to throw them under the bus because we have a great relationship and it's getting better. But yeah, I mean, if you read the newspaper right now, there's something going on that we did not get the information. We did not know about those projects.
Well, this is refreshing. I mean, I've been on here 20 years and this started 15 years ago out of concerns I was getting from people trying to develop. So it seems to me you've turned it around.
We're trying. I mean, it's a big ship.
I
so
have
it takes
no
a while.
angst against any of the people that run the sewer districts. I was just trying to solve a problem that existed. It seems like if you're agreeable to be a more united voice and work together, we get the same result without having to go through the throes of consolidation. And if your major problem is not being notified by the county, I know there's a couple of us here that will look further into that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Okay, I'll close public comment.
I'll just say in Paradise, the very first thing is your septic sewer, that governs everything. There is nothing that happens until that is taken care of. I mean, seriously, if you do, you're spending money foolishly because you ain't gonna put that project together if you don't have that deciphered. So this is beyond understanding. I don't want to belabor it, but wow.
I provided 3 items as my actions requested, and that's what I.
You don't need a motion. You just want direction from the board.
I think.
That's
All right.
fine.
Well, I would move your 3 objectives to get accomplished.
I'll second. Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
That was quite a report, Steve. Thank you.
It happens.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, sorry, I've never seen her before. Like that. I've never seen her before. She's here doing.
She may be glad to have to sit through it.
She picked this one?
I don't know.
You're fascinating.
Well, the piece missing is the people that have to implement it. That's the hard part. And if you don't have that, and we've had that off and on in our system up there, where people implement it, some, they don't go the full length. You've got to have people that are diligent at, so anyway.
Looking on has been a long period of no development and then lack of staff and new staff. I think those are the missing pieces that caused the breakdown.
Okay, people, I'm lost here because all of a sudden I'm in Cal LAFCO and that's not where we're at right now. Just a second. Here we go. Okay, so now we have public comment on items not on the agenda. Anybody like to speak? No. Executive officers report.
All right, I'll try to go through this fairly quickly for you. Just get to the items that are newer. The annual financial audit has begun. That's usually starts in December with a request for information from us. And then we work back and forth with some contractual agreements with the auditor's office, and then they begin in earnest coming into the office and examining our books and so forth. It's a very predictable process, has always gone quite smoothly. I hope it goes smoothly again this year as it has. I also, just so you all know, this is as we transition in staff and look to different job functions, this will be the first year where our now office manager will participate more in the auditing process. And I just tell you that only that you can see that when we made that promotion, these additional functions were going to be added over time as she was able to assimilate more of that information from our now retired staff who's still helping out on a part-time basis. So this is a good big first year in that regard, although I don't foresee any particular problems coming out of that. Oroville Sewer Agencies, we just talked about. City of Chico, I continue to participate on that growth committee. I don't have anything new to really provide, although as Mr. Kimmelshoe pointed out, that this is being driven by the rejection of the Valley's Edge project, and it's having consequences. It wasn't just you didn't like one project and you defeated it. That upset 10 years of active planning on the part of the city and really shook up the snow globe, if you will, about where to go. So yeah, the county's going to be forced to look at higher density developments. Cities are going to look at higher density developments, and it's going to have to find a lot more infill potential.
So is that something that can come back to the people, or is it done?
It's over.
It's
That
over.
Decision made. They have to wait 2 years before they can even consider putting that same application.
But after 2 years, it could be
That's my
changed or
understanding.
altered. Okay.
I doubt that will happen, given that the referendum was not close. I don't know what carnation they could come back with that would
But they could do
change.
it through the county instead of the city.
Yeah, well, that would look completely different.
Oh, no.
Not gonna happen.
I don't know. I don't know the politics. of it.
I'm not going to speculate on, I mean, yes, the land is unincorporated, always has the option to go into county and see what they can offer or not. It's as simple as that. I don't think the county's going to be able to do what the city was able to approve. So you're not going to see a Valley's Edge reproduced in the county. I don't
Okay.
see any
Yeah.
such circumstance.
Yeah,
there.
it's zoned A20 right now. So, but your ranchettes would be about the only thing that we would consider, not saying I would consider that. I have a question on the annexations we just did. So most of that area is zoned or one acre a minimum, right? So once it's annexed into the city, they can make it much higher density. Is
Yeah,
that
the
correct?
R1 zoning district that the city has it pre-zoned is 3.1 to 7 units per acre.
Perfect.
As opposed to
Okay.
1 unit per acre in the county.
I just wanted to make sure they didn't have to live by the 1 acre.
No.
The
They can
R1.
choose to stay in the county and build under
No,
1 acre,
yeah.
or they can, if they're contiguous, annex to the city and build under their densities.
Okay, great. Glad to hear it. And so as we annex additional properties, they will be able to develop those at higher density.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I will add this as an aside and a plea, if you will. I also think that the county has a really fundamental role when they see an applicant come in and wants to do something that's 1 acre zoning. And as I'll just be blunt, where we cannot afford to waste urbanized land with 1 acre zoning. And while I get the county has its zone for that, I would like to see that the county would take some time to explain to whoever the applicant is, that this is better done through the city. The options, the opportunities, and what's good for the community is far greater if you do it through the city than what the county can offer. And that's not that you don't want to. It's just that land should be in a holding pattern until it's developed at a density that we get more rooftops out of the process. So,
But the county doesn't have a sewer hookup.
correct.
And
So
so
they're bound.
they're bound by it. You're right.
Right.
Okay.
And the last thing, I just want to make a point on that Valley's Edge project, and this is really, I think it's valuable. This is an exact, that was an exact example of what we refer to as ballot box zoning. This was a process that developed over 10 to 15 years of time, involved the city general plan, city holding process hearings. We ended up adjusting the sphere a few years back in order to accommodate it. Hundreds of hearings, thousands of documents, and yet it goes to the ballot. It all comes down to sound bites on a 3-minute television ad, and that's how people vote. So really, people voted on very limited information that professional staff and elected officials took 15 years to sift through.
Don't forget the Habitat Conservation Plan. I mean,
That's right.
we at BCAG went through all the motions to come to a reasonable agreement with all parties on a habitat conservation plan. And the threat was put out there, if this isn't passed, the environmental groups would unite and be against any project such as Valley's Edge, and they did it. And if we'd had the plan in place, they'd have signed off.
That's right.
And so then it's an area, that kind of politics is emotion. It's based, frankly on emotion, like you're gonna cut the trees down, kill the frogs, whatever. If you've ever been out there, it grows rocks pretty well. But I can't get over the fact that we couldn't get the Habitat Conservation Plan done. I don't know what else to do. We reached out to Southern California congressmen that were Republicans that had one, and I got handed my hat for even suggesting that they go talk to our congressman about it, because he helped shelve it. And him and I always disagree about that. I think if you want to see a project, they have to include a habitat conservation plan in some manner.
Boy, am I glad that's not in our purview.
No.
Well said.
And you know, all the more reason, and I know we're just pontificating here, but all the more reason that if Chico doesn't want to grow, we need to make it easier for other communities, the other 4 communities, incorporated cities to grow, and including Oroville. And if we can get the sewer system squared away, then it will increase the ability for Oroville to grow. So, you know, if that's,
Paradise has empty lots.
what's that?
Paradise has
I-
empty lots.
Do they have a few? I didn't know.
They don't have any sewer.
And
I like what he just
and my friends in Gridley and Biggs are also interested in doing that. So just as this commission, you know, as we see projects, I think we need to be aware that that is the case. And Chico doesn't want it, that's fine. We're kind of be like Davis in Yolo County. So enough said. Thank you. Thanks for letting me pontificate.
That's not under my control.
I
So-
noticed you didn't mention Durham growing.
No, are we okay in Durham? No growth. Prime farm, right?
Next item, just touch base on, and it has a similar theme here, but it's the Tuscan Ridge Plan Unit Development. And I'm not going to get into the details about the project. I just give you the new information because we've been through this, but the public hearing was held by the Planning Commission on November 14th, just a couple weeks ago. It was recommended 4-1 and it'll be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors for review. I'm not going to talk about the land use because that's not my concern or this commission's purview. But I will say one thing I want to share right now, because it's going to be instrumental, is similar to what you heard about here in Oroville. There was a very simple process that was put in place to look at whether or not the sewer system and the water system that is going to be serving this will be managed and serviced by the Paradise Irrigation District. I will tell you today that this is a very much an unknown. PID has not committed to doing this. PID says if they do it, they only want to do it as an extension of service. An extension of service has to be within your sphere, where there's a public health and safety problem. It is not within their sphere.
Plan.
I'm just telling you this now, that if a application comes into me for this project, for that particular scenario to serve the sewer and maintain it, I cannot recommend approval of that. It is in violation of state law to do so. This should have never been heard before this issue was resolved. That project goes nowhere without a sewer system, and make no bones about it. State Water Board has said the system that is there now is an unpermitted system. You might as well think of it as it's not even there, because that's going to have to be fixed. This project goes nowhere without that. And yet this was almost not talked about at all during the Planning Commission meeting, other than to say that PID will do that in the future, and that's somebody else's process, and that'll go through LAFCO. I'm not here to pick a fight with any other planning person or department, but the reality is that issue is huge. It is almost the single biggest issue of the project, and it is to this day unresolved. That should not be, just to quote Mr. Boland's comment, that's just ludicrous. That developer should not be facing that situation.
Did
By
you,
having, where's that?
The supervisors will be addressing this is because it's a plan unit development.
Yes, it's a
So,
legislative change.
I don't think the board will have the opportunity to weigh into the minutia details that one key point that you brought up. Is that correct?
They're gonna be getting a question of whether or not to.
Certainly have that right, yeah. I hope your
Yeah, we
legal
will.
counsel can tell you
Yeah.
one way or the other.
And I want to be, that this is very clear, is I went out of my way to make sure that our position was articulated throughout the process in the NOP, with the
You
notice of preparation for the EIR, and in responses to the draft EIR. And most of those things in the final EIR, for those of you who know, the final EIR is where you respond to the questions on the draft. They were dismissed as unrelevant, non-relevant to the environmental review of the project. There's potentially an argument there for that, but it should never have, it probably would have been a page of a staff report to explain it. So right now, the condition on that project, and this is what troubles me, and I'm not trying to pick on any agency here, but it troubles me when agencies define a problem, they determine what a potential solution is. But until that is, Al and Steve and some of the planners in the room know, until that condition is actually listed there and can be implemented with reasonable expectation that it's going to happen, it's not a condition or a mitigation. It's not legal. And now you can play that game any way you want, but really this comes down to the same thing Commissioner Boland said. This is upfront information, doing your legwork, making sure that the planners have the complete 100% of the pie figured out. You can't defer parts of a project to another agency because that's where that entitlement comes from. Planning is comprehensive. It describes the whole process that makes that development tick. I think in this one area on this project, that has not worked. So you're going to hear probably more from me on this as it unfolds, but
My concern is it's getting backdoored. If you proceed with the project and the project goes through, then someone's got to service it with water and sewer. Well, that's backdooring the whole thing, and it puts pressure on an agency that shouldn't be put on. That should have been done up front. This is not the way to do it. I mean, this is totally, there's a word for it, but backwards. We'll leave it that way.
so anyhow, I just want to give you a heads up because this is not going to be an easy discussion moving forward on this project, because there's a lot of things that should have been done, in my opinion, before it was ripe for public hearing, and those things have not occurred. Is that what you're asking me as your executive officer to do?
Yes.
Okay, I will do that.
No, why not?
It's not appropriate to talk about here.
That's fine.
Okay.
Anyhow, I'm just giving you a
Wear
heads
two
up.
different hats, man.
You're not asked to do anything today. It's just this project is in the pipeline, and I'm just giving you the lay of the land of where it sits today. And that I expect that I'm going to have some difficulties, and I'm probably going to be in front of the commission with something at some point to ask you. And mind you, that even, and this is a tie off to this for the two supervisors. If this cannot work through PID, the only alternative identified in the county's documents is to form a county service area. They did not even describe or discuss how that works, other than to say a CSA will be formed and that will be done by LAFCO at a later date. You should know that. Your county supervisors have spent a lot of time talking about CSAs and the proliferation of CSAs and why we should not be using them. So this is just another piece that I don't think was vetted in a way that makes it useful to the county board of supervisors to understand the whole picture. So, and again, CSA gets formed, that's going to be a resolution of application that comes from the board of supervisors to us to form the CSA. And I'm not saying that's a terrible idea. It's just not been vetted. And if the PID function does not work, that is your fallback position. And I think that everybody ought to know how that works.
Well, CSAs are much improved from where they were. I mean, when you're having under discussion, when we were having development that wasn't very rational right after the 71 MAP Act and so forth, they formed CSAs on a whim and they were approved and rubber stamped. Now we look to make sure that they're properly funded and they have cost escalators included. And so they're much more complicated and more likely to succeed than they were in the past. So a CSA isn't out of the picture on any project.
I don't disagree with this. There is a time and a place, certainly, that CSAs continue to be a very useful tool. And this may be one of them. So
My difficulty in speaking about this, because all during the general plan, this is well over a decade ago now, this was brought up over and over and over. And that's when people should have commented and killed the whole thing, in my opinion.
I just want to be, if I might real quick, just to be clear, what I'm saying to you is I'm not saying I'm opposed to the land use. I'm not saying I'm opposed to any of what is being proposed under the general plan. I'm focusing simply on a procedural process of how agencies work together to get to an effective outcome. And in this case, PID isn't arguing about that. I'm not arguing about that. All I'm talking about is the process by which we identify who the service providers are going to be and the cost of those service provisions. That is, to me, Bill, I appreciate what you're saying. I'm not here to say that the county land use process failed. It made a choice and that land was chosen for development. And it most certainly can operate on a sewer system and the water system. There just has to be identified how that's going to work. So this isn't against the land use. This is about the process that got us to the approval and the failure to address the issue of sewer service and water service provision. That's it. So I don't disagree with you. I think we're on the same page.
Just truck it to Orville, it'll be fine.
I'll move on to the next one, which is a much more
But it's
positive
That's a joke.
update. It also involves the term Tuscan. It's the Tuscan Water District. I'm happy to say that they are doing very well. Shannon and I have participated in a few of their meetings. I've attended as many as I could where items were on about their formation. They're plodding along and they're doing everything right. Their meetings are transparent. They talk about everything. They're meeting all of my expectations. So that's all I want to say is this first initial year, for all it took to get here, these folks have done a really, really good job of being public about what they're doing. And to that degree, the single biggest condition they got, as you all remember, was they had to come up with a revenue measure to cover an equivalent of $445,000 of annual operating revenue, based on the budget that they proposed to us that we approved the project on. That ballot measure is out in the mail as we speak. Ballots have been mailed. The hearing closes on January 15th. They'll hold a hearing. They'll collect the ballots, similar to what some of you have done when you look at revenue measures. That's an up or down vote. Majority rules. And if they get the money, then they continue to move on. And if they do not generate the money, then we have some really hard discussions about where we go from there. I don't want to talk about any of that because it's not really an agenda item. I just wanted to let you know that every condition we have placed on them, they have not only met the condition. There was a lot of talk when you heard all these hearings about all the disingenuous things that were suggested. But today, they have met every single thing I've asked them to do. They call me on almost weekly sometimes to ask questions. And if this ballot moves through, I think they're putting themselves in a great position to really serve their community, that particular district constituency, and assist the county and the GSAs in coming up with groundwater sustainability solutions. I'm very, we look at a lot of districts and you hear Shannon and I talk about some districts and some things are not so good. Like not being able to even find people to serve on your board, for instance.
I have a few of those.
Yeah.
And yet here we have a brand new district that is really just stepping up in the plate and doing everything they can. And I know they work closely with your water department staff, and Todd's probably spent some time with them talking because that's part of his district. And so it's a good news, and I hope their ballot passes. I hope they get the money, because I can tell you they have a lot of exciting projects that they're going to work with the GSAs to implement. And I think it's all positive. And with that, I will just talk one quickly thing. This is just to give Bill an opportunity more than anything else. Cal LAFCO's in a little bit of turmoil right now, and that's to probably understate it.
Bill's not running.
And we would argue that it's because
Little bit
Bill's
of
not
that.
running it.
There it is.
I'll tell you this, there was so many things. For years, there's been a traditional historical process that Cal LAFCO has operated under. In the last year, under particular people and their leadership, and we're talking like 2 or 3 people here who found themselves in positions of authority and leadership, who really just changed the dynamic and blew a whole lot of things up and has really pissed off a bunch of our members. I have my concerns. Bill has some deep concerns. It's not instrumental to us as it is to some other agencies, larger agencies down south, larger LAFCOs, I should say. There's a lot unfolding. I just want to let you know that Bill and I are we're going to be at a meeting on January 10th in person in Sacramento, and it's going to be a doozy. But this is a sad situation where you have a process that works. Some new people come in and they think the process needs to change. They don't consult with all the other people who came before them and who are their current members, took some actions, and then they found out those actions were significantly disliked. I'm being very kind, aren't I, Bill? So
Yeah.
you're going to hear from me in the future, and it could involve things like, do we want to suspend our membership? Do we want to continue to pay into the organization? These are things that other LAFCOs have already put in writing that they do not plan to continue in the organization unless there's fundamental leadership changes and some bylaw changes that correct some of the things that went wrong, which I don't want to bore you with because it's really the minutia of how the agency works. But
Well, from my perspective, there's 2 mistakes. One, like when I went out, I challenged everybody that, hey, we don't have to get 58 votes on everything, especially if it's a hard issue that we need to take on. And one of them is providing services outside your district using the loophole provided in how the language is interpreted. And instead of taking that on, which San Diego and other large LAFCOs really wanted to do, because they were faced with people using the loophole and having to go to court and so forth, they said, no, it's too difficult, especially districts. And I know we've talked out, and I think they should have took on a hard issue, even if it was a multi-year thing. The next thing that happened was they decided, because they belonged to another organization, and let's say it's CSAC or it's League of Cities or whatever, the way they do their legislative work, it does not include staff really. They meet and they come to consensus, and then they involve staff. Well, we know that LAFCO depends on our staff, just like Steve helps us all the time. Every LAFCO around the state pretty much is staff oriented. The commission members aren't paid, they're like us. It's part-time or part of another job. And so they were going to eliminate the input of staff. Well, that went over I can't tell you how it went over, because I literally thought we were voting to rectify the issues that 4 or 5 counties had threatened to leave the organization over, and I wasn't paying much attention, I'll be honest. And I go, okay, I gave a little speech. Well, I guess we're making things right. I wasn't paying attention. That's when you're not face to face either. To be honest, I got one screen going over here, phone ringing over there, and I got you over here. So I immediately, when Steve and I talked about it, I go, oh my God, this is wrong. We tried to unring the bell. And instead of seeing, I'm going to be kind. Instead of being a leader that sees that you may have went the wrong way and 70% of the people are against you, it turned into like a political manipulation of how Robert's rules of order were applied, where we were allowing more than one motion at a time to be on the floor up into a ballot where it caused one gentleman not to run and somebody that said they would never run to get on the board. I mean, they actually, instead of just trying to just turn around and go back where we were, they went off on a why fighting harder, and it just caused a lot of angst. And to be honest, I don't know if I'm gonna stay on this board. I gotta see how it goes the next meeting. Because I'm not gonna go down there and waste my time or your money or time for me to be traveling to go to meetings where you can have two motions at once, and the second motion, I can't even describe how crazy it was. You can Google Robert's Rule of Order. It'll always bounce out one motion at a time. You can find a book somewhere there's an exception, or a water district somewhere, let's pick on them, that has exceptions, but it's just not how we do business. So I believe in Cal LAFCO. If it's going the right way, it helps educate the legislature who keeps trying to go around us when we're inconvenient. They formed us, but then they want to go around us when they can't. It does really help people without means, like when South Orville was annexed. I'm very proud of that. The city of Orville voted it in, but it was because the county was willing to do it. The people in the neighborhood were willing to do it, and LAFCO is willing to do it. The city did the right thing. It allows us to, when necessary, consolidate or dissolve, or create. And I think it is a very rational thing, but on a state level, I'm being very kind, actually. And I think Steve was very kind, and I stood up for you, Mr. Brown. They got rude with our attorney one time, and I said, yeah,
How dare they do that?
yeah, I mean, he's an
But
excellent attorney.
They felt that the attorneys were intimidating some of the committee members. Yes, so.
No,
Attorney being intimidated?
no, but it was really a point
Mr. Brown.
of law and order that you tried to bring up, and I go, what? But I mean, all right, enough said. Anybody wants to take my position?
No way, man.
No.
All right.
You're a legend.
Get Al
I
on.
met your son, by the way.
I know it. He loves you.
He spent 10 minutes just praising him.
Well, I know it. He's just like his dad.
Oh, okay, I'll buy you a drink. It's so good.
That's all I have for you this morning. January is gonna be a canceled meeting, unless something super special comes up. I'll let you know, talk to Bill. Otherwise, I'll just use my closeout here to say, thank you so much for being our commission. The ability to have this conversation without people getting their feelings hurt when hard things are said is pretty rare anymore in public forum. So I really cannot say enough how much I appreciate this commission and its ability to talk frankly about things. And if you need to tell me something frankly, please, you always do. And I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, we've had conversations.
So have a happy holiday. I hope everything is good for everyone, and
Happy and safe holidays to everyone.
All right,
Everybody, thank you.
we have to adjourn.
Meeting adjourned.
before you adjourn, you should know that today is Mr. Lucas's birthday. Yes, and at least a wish of happy birthday from the commission.
Hey, to
You, happy birthday to